Welcome to this lesson. Of course, there are hundreds of already existing tutorials on this piece. That's why I'm not going to teach you which notes to play. We are going to explore some universal strategies, how to learn pieces like these in general, and what this particular piece can teach us in regards of good technique, efficient technique, and of course, expressive piano playing, and what kind of contrasting interpretation options we have when we approach such compositions. So the first step would be to play this piece as a set of chords, because we have basically arpeggios, which we can just summon together and play it as a chord progression. And of course, it would be really great if you would analyze these chords, like C major, and then this is D minor 7th, and then a dominant 7th chord, and back to C major. And if you struggle with identifying these chords, of course you can find online already existing PDFs where you can just have this piece as a set of chords. However, of course, it's really great if you can just derive these chords by just looking into the real score. And while playing it like this, as a chord progression, your task is not to only understand these chords on the cognitive level, like analyzing them. Your task is actually much more creative. You have to be able to listen to a chord and really listen to it and try to sing all the notes of that chord. Right, like that, yeah? And then so you would be able to hear all the like levels of each chord. Right? So that's why this is a very useful exercise, which will sharpen your ear, and also this will allow you to feel that each chord has a certain emotional energy, which is different for each chord. A certain color, let's say, yeah? For example, the first chord is so serene, so calm, so pure, right? It's like a chessboard before the game starts, where you see the figures, but nobody moves yet. And then the second chord is when you make the first move, immediately challenging your opponent. And that's why there is more tension, because this is a 7th chord. And the A7th chord by default has more tension because of this 7th tone. And in this case, in bar 2, this 7th tone is beneath here. So we have this crisp second, major second at the foundation. And you see how crispy it sounds actually. For me, it's like umami taste. It's like soy sauce or something, like. So it's delicious, but also kind of like mildly irritating a little bit. And then we have this chord, which is also a little bit tense, but differently, right? Because this is our dominant 7th chord. So listen how they relate, and try to feel which chord is more tense. This one, or maybe this one, or maybe they are equally tense. And then we have a resolution which by default is softer. Yeah, so we have a phrase 4 bars long, so we immediately try to experience this phrase as a whole. And then we have a sequence, we have a much wider chord. You see how wider are the distances between the notes. A 4th, then a 5th, and then another 4th. So this chord is much more open. It's like breathing in until your chest is full of air, and then breathing out, and then again breathing in, breathing out. So we again have this breathing. We can breathe with the music and we feel its flow more naturally. And a quick reminder, if you want to learn more beautiful pieces by Johann Sebastian Bach, I have a really comprehensive course featuring 6 intermediate level pieces by Bach. And you can get this course at a 50% discount just for a few days. So check out the link in the description. And what is actually very interesting about this prelude is that if you compare it to the second one in C minor, which is a very contrasting piece, and when you look at them, like when you look at this one and you look at that one and you think like, no, this is just an opposite piece, right? What does it have in common? But actually, if you compare closer, yeah, right? Now compare with this. Right, you see, so basically and this, you see that chord progression functionally it's actually very similar, and that's the most fun thing actually, because Bach wrote so contrasting pieces, but he actually used kind of like the same template in a certain aspect. That's why your second creative assignment after you play this piece in chords is to actually compare this piece with the next Prelude in C minor, number 2, from Well-Tempered Clavier, and try to find more similarities in structure, in chord progressions, and in how the piece is structured, because there are more similarities than this first one, which I showed you. And this is a fun exercise by trying to figure out which devices Bach used similarly between these very contrasting pieces. Now, your second assignment is the most boring one, I'm not going to lie. This is a necessary but not very exciting stage. I call this stage equalizing of strikes, where your task is basically to learn how to walk and support each finger equally. But this is a drastically important stage. If you miss this one, it will be hard to do anything else. So at this stage, you just sit straight, relax your shoulders, straight but not tense back. Just feel the weight center in your stomach. Relaxed arms, make sure that they can move around. Your wrist is at the key level. Your fingers are gently curled, so something we call a natural curve. So not too tense, not too weak and flat, but natural curve where you would strengthen the nail joints of all fingers and the knuckle bridge. And the wrist is perfectly fine and calm at the key level. And then you just support one finger at a time, making sure that you can withhold the weight of the arm with this particular finger, and then you transfer the weight to the next finger. And we aim for perfectly even and well-supported sound, which feels very secure, very stable, and very even. So each note has to be played with the same amount of energy. It means that you have to strike each key with the same speed, which is not that easy as it seems, right? Because we have so different fingers, different in length, different in strength. And of course, for that, it's really great to check the position of your thumb, making sure that it's well supported here by curving the nail joint just a tiny bit like this, and keeping the wrist at the key level here, not below like this and not too high, but right at the key level. So there is a small distance between the thumb and the key here, a small angle, let's say. And I prefer to play the thumb notes, whatever I play with the thumb. In most cases, I would play it not like forward like this, but I would play it on a rather like hanging or maybe even like pulling sensation. So like kind of pulling towards myself like this, approaching the key from above and just supporting like this. Then we transfer the weight to the second finger, making sure that we don't bend any joint here, that it's supported, and that the wrist is still flexible enough. And for the last finger, for the fourth finger, we move our arm slightly forward exactly when we play that finger. So here, like pulling motion, transfer the weight to the second finger, and then go forward just a tiny bit. This is a really tiny motion, like this, in order to support the joint of this otherwise weak finger. So we want to get a little bit of like skeletal resistance in it. So pull, push, pull, pull, out, in. So that's our motion coordination. And what we aim to do here is to support the left hand, relaxing the tension, so not really pushing after the hit, but trying to relax as much tension as possible while we hold these longer notes. And in the right notes, we transfer the weight really well, we strike each key with the same amount of energy, and release the fingers instantly. So we have to be very sensitive about not overlapping the notes, because we have to discipline our fingers. A healthy mezzo forte. And don't think about the phrasing, don't think about nuances at this stage, just master this, because this is already a very important and solid foundation for your further progress. As soon as you're good with this, you start asking yourself, what is actually happening here inside those musical cells? And there are some really cool things are happening, because look at the texture. Bach could easily write this piece as one voice. Right? And you can play this on a violin, let's say, maybe, or some wind instrument, right, as a one melody line. Yeah. But he writes it as three voices, actually. So let's have a look at these voices. At the foundation, we have a bass voice, which is very solid, very calm, comes on the beat, very supportive, right? Create this warm foundation. So for me, this voice is like, if I were to assign personalities to these voices, for me, it's a father who is always supportive, very reliable, always showing up, caring, supporting, and so on. And on the top, you have... So for me, this is like a mother who is very caring, very active, very like a little bit maybe helicopter parenting sometimes, but in a good way, you know, not too obtrusive, not too crazy. Yeah? And in the middle, we have the most interesting voice, which comes offbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You see, so this is a syncopated note, and this is important because syncopated notes always have more energy. They're like intruders. They are kind of like creating some mess a little bit by creating this mischief or intrusion between the beats. So they kind of throw you off balance. So for me, this middle voice is like a small kid who always wants to have fun, and you have parents, and this kid always tries to kind of, you know, escape and create some mess a little bit, right? So you have three different voices, three personalities. That's why your first task would be just to manage your right hand. Just let's do mother thing first, because it's very complex. We have more tasks. Women are very multitasking, right? Very like peripheral side, and a lot of going on. So here you have much more notes, that's why, and also much more words to speak figuratively. So we have to decide how we want to pronounce these words. For example, driving the flow towards the fifth note among these six notes. For this, we can start much lighter. The first group, like from above, and very gently diving through the keys like this. Not even to the bottom of the keys, but kind of at the surface of the keys. So that's the first group of three notes. And the second group of three notes, going toward the second finger. So we have a lighter group, and more active group. And at first, feel free to exaggerate this, just to feel this, just to get used to this phrasing. Or maybe you want to phrase it differently. Maybe you want to start a little bit more actively and then calm down. So the first group might be a little bit more supported, like playing kind of down right to the bottom of the keys. And the second group is lighter, raising your forearm and relaxing your fingers. which will result in a little bit more calm ending. So exaggerating, these two versions would be like, or maybe, of course, I'm slightly exaggerating. I would not do this that much, but as a practice exercise, this is a really great exercise for developing this motive articulation and micro phrasing skills. And then, when you're good with your right hand, let's play the left hand. So supporting the bass note really well here, going through the key with confidence, without any tension, just go through. The wrist bounces at the key level here, and very stable finger. So this has to be very confident and stable. And then quickly shift the weight to the thumb. And mark that note a little bit. Feel that jazzy impulse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And don't be afraid to mark it a little bit more for now as an exercise, just to feel that energy, feel that vibe. Because otherwise, if you don't really feel that dynamics between the voices, that trialogue between the voices, it turns very easily into this kind of like silly, cheesy piece. Which is of course beautiful. I have nothing against that, and maybe I would play like that as an encore, maybe on some concert, but it's only one of possible renditions, right? And we still have so much interesting texture to play around. That's why we always have an option to play it like beautifully, very musically, you know, in this general way. But let's first practice a little bit more precisely exaggerating these tensions in the texture, within the texture. For this, support and then a mild accent here. And very precise right hand. Releasing the keys, not overlapping them, but nevertheless expressively phrasing with care and active attitude each element. Of course, this will be too active, like too much going on and too pretentious for some of you, but as an exercise, again, this is a very good way to practice this piece, just to explore it, just to feel it on a little bit deeper level. And then finally, when we already have dealt with all these voices, we can choose how exactly we want to play this piece. Maybe we indeed want to play it very delicately and very dreamy, and maybe even experiment with some kind of like half pedaling technique where you would press the pedal very gently, like 10%, and very mildly change it with kind of delay between the bars. Experimenting with how softly you can play without losing the notes. And for this, you go very evenly through the key with each finger deeply enough. Because if you stay at the surface being tense, then the chances are high that you don't move the key with enough energy, so the hammer doesn't reach the string. But if you go with confidence through each key like that, you usually have a much better chance of reaching the string and reaching it so subtly that a hammer would not hit the string, but would rather like gently kiss it. And this is our goal here. And for this, of course, it's great to develop this kinesthetic feeling of the keys. And while you go through the key, you actually feel how the mechanics work. So you're well tuned to the like inside of the piano, feeling intimately what happens, like how exactly the hammers move inside. So you see, I try to stay with the keys even when I release the key, and I feel how the key pushes my finger up, because I want to feel the mechanics at its subtle well, you got it, very subtle. So then, of course, we can experiment with a completely different interpretation. We can actually play this piece in a more jazzy way. I actually really love how Bobby McFerrin sings it. It's a fantastic video. Find it on YouTube. I hope it's still there. With such an articulation and with such a crisp quality of the sound. So why not? Why not to try something more extravagant? Because everyone plays this piece in such a nice way. Maybe sometimes we can just have a little fun, just for once. You know, you got. Or something like that, yeah. So why not? I'm really open, and I try to be I try to explore different possibilities instead of just stick to one way to play a piece and proclaim that, okay, this is the only truth. So I think that it would be really great to have more interpretations. Since we don't have anything in the score, we don't have tempo or legato or piano forte markings. We have just bare notes. So we can as well explore different options. And then when you have practiced different options, and of course when you practice, for example, more non-legato approach, your task would be here to learn how to very quickly provide an impulse through the key and relax the finger instantly, like this, you see. So this is a very, very important skill. Basically, the level of your virtuosity at the piano depends not only at how quickly you can move the fingers, but also how quickly you can relax them, so they would be ready for the next task. And relaxing fingers quickly is a very big challenge for the vast majority of learners I've met in my life. That's why this would be a really great exercise, playing the right hand non-legato and releasing the fingers quickly. Like really quickly. Even if you want to play this piece like presto. Relaxing quickly, each note, right? So that's also a great exercise. Although, of course, if you play like this at a competition, you're out immediately. Well, too bad. Then, of course, we have to plan the macro structure of this piece. We have to play it through and analyze what kind of sections we have here and how do we want to build them dynamically. For me personally, it's incredibly important to feel one flow in a piece, and this is what makes the difference between just normal performers and really great artists, this sensation of a flow which is unstoppable. That's why when you build your interpretation, also keep in mind that you have to somehow deliver a really consistent, coherent story. But nevertheless, it can be quite diverse. Well, let's experiment together. I have no idea what I'm doing right now. I will be just trying to create a plan on the go. A little bit more tension, resolution. New phrase. Secondary dominant. B flat. Getting darker. More puzzled. very crispy minor second in the left hand, and a very kind G7 modulation. Getting darker. Tension rises. Breakthrough. And notice this beautiful major seventh here. Pop, pop. Really beautiful. I really love these crispy dissonances in Bach. So for example, that could be a plan. Maybe it can be different on another day, or maybe you just want to play it more consistently. For example, just the whole piece pianissimo. That also would be a really great experience if you just immerse in this. And nothing happens, yeah, for the whole piece, for example. That also would be a really interesting concept to explore. But when you plan a piece like this, try to specify where is the most intensive spot, what is the most intensive part of the piece. For me, this is definitely when we have this churn. sus4, dominant seventh, and then we would expect, well, we could actually basically finish the piece here in bar number 27 and bar 28. We could already finish. But instead of that, we go to another turn, which is even more spectacular and which features even more interesting harmonies. That's why, for me, bar number 28 is so important, and I would really lead toward that bar for quite a long time. At the same time, you have to decide which spot is the softest. For me, this is probably this spot, because it's so sweet and this is also soft, but it has a little bit of that bitterness here at the minor second. Yeah, so I hope that this lesson has inspired you to look for music, to search for music and something that you can relate to and something that can inspire you, because this is ultimately the most important thing when you go to play piano, to be inspired. Thank you for watching this, and see you next time.